We travel to see what's around the bend and what we're capable of. And now Capital One's new class of travel card can keep up with you. Introducing Venture X from Capital One. With 10x miles on hotels and rental cars, and 5x miles on flights booked through Capital One Travel, and 2x miles on everything else you buy. Venture X, for those always asking, where next? Capital One, what's in your wallet?
Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com for details.
I haven't really woken up until I've had my McDonald's breakfast deal. And I know this is true because before breakfast, I put my phone in the refrigerator and couldn't find the keys that were already in my hand.
Nothing gets the morning going like the first sip of an iced coffee. Get any size and any flavor for 99 cents until 11 a.m. Price and participation may vary.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. McDonald's. I'm loving it.
My little cryptid, and this isn't scripted. I wanna equip you and use against my enemies, yeah. You see, you wanted to save you, and then learn how to raise you. But I forget you from the wilderness.
Eamonn and Fuzz Podcast. I'd like to apologise.
Oh no.
Yeah, I didn't realise that my poems were having such an effect on you, Eamonn.
Yeah, no, it's been transformative. Why are the poems having an effect on me? I mean, I know obviously, but I'm just wondering why.
Well, I got a phone call from your mom, and she, actually it was a voice message, and she actually left a voice message if you'd like to hear it.
Yeah, please.
Okay, cool.
Hey, Rob and Monster Fuzz. This is Eamon's mom, Anne here. I have a little bit of a problem that I need to share with you. So, Eamon's little brother, Cornwallis, came to me earlier today, and he was terribly upset. He found his big brother Eamonn crying in his bedroom. He was whimpering something about mean poems, but Cornwallis and I aren't sure what that's all about. Anyway, I just want to see Eamonn happy and practicing with his samurai sword again. Please let me know if you can help. Thanks.
So,
yeah, that sounds like my mum. Yeah, and where was it? Just out of curiosity, where was it that Cornwallis saw me crying?
In your bedroom.
Yeah, which bedroom? Is it like Wexford bedroom?
Yeah,
where I sleep in
bedroom.
Dublin.
Okay.
Yeah, it was.
But before you get into anything else, I actually have a poem as well.
Now, my ma told you. She said, "Stop upsetting me with poems."
No, this is a sorry poem. This is an apologetic, remorseful poem. I'm sorry, Eamonn. I didn't mean this. Let's go back to talking about penis. We are a cryptid podcast at our core. This much is for sure. Let's get back to talking about when to go at our door. We can have poems every now and then, but the truth is, I want to see you swing your samurai sword again.
I actually saw a samurai sword for €150 the other day when I was going around. It's probably fucking Mike Guiney's samurai sword, and I really wanted to buy it. And I do have a fedora as well, so like, you know what I mean? Like, I could be one of those guys that are like, how come the girls never go for the nice guys? I've been here all along, baby. Yeah, I'm like a weeb without women problems.
So. Yeah, so I hope now that your mom is satisfied with my apology.
Well, look, I think that she just wants the best for her sons, because obviously it affected Cornwallis, who's my brother as well. So that's, I think that's the main thing. But I'll tell you what, in keeping with the monster spirit theme, I'll try to channel Cornwallis now about his response from the poem and make it in a kind of a nice little manner with assonance, alliteration,
wow, big words.
That good shit. I don't know what any of them mean, but okay. So I'm just channeling now, just starting the channel, and that's why you can hear the table, because that's the channel. Everything's shaking.
Cool, yeah.
Right, we're good, right. My name's Cornwallis, and I am real. And these emotions I do feel. When I see my brother weep and cry, I wish about the door demon I hadn't lied. I said that he had suplexed Eamonn, but that was just because I was blaming Rob Billington for creating me, when all along I failed to be. See, that's the thing about being a Wallace of Corn. You wear a permanent crown of thorn, like Jesus Christ upon the cross. Cornwallis' soul is vacant, lost.
So that was very good, Eamonn.
Thank you. So now Cornwallis is gone. I think, Cornwallis, you're creating a tulpa of Cornwallis. I feel like, do you ever see season 4 or 5 of Buffy, where she has a sister Dawn that just shows up out of nowhere?
Yeah.
I think you're doing that now.
Okay.
Like, I'm just going to wake up one day and have memories of Cornwallis, and he's just going to be hanging around with me. Telling about the time the Dover demon fucking suplexed me into the bush.
Well, that might be so, but yeah, it was pretty good there. I enjoyed Cornwallis's poem, or rhyme is the rhyme version of a poem. I suppose
this podcast.
I suppose we should do an intro here. What's up, everyone? Rob here, and with me is
Eamonn.
We are Monster Fuzz. Quick little update on Patreon. We have basically set it up. We've gotten in deep. We've done our tiers, and best of all, we have some patrons. So a quick little shout out, Eamonn. Do you want to give a shout out to the patrons?
Yeah, a big shout out to Jimmy, Neve, and Bailey. We appreciate it so much. Really more than we can explain. And also to Tim at the National Introvert Society. He hooked us up with some awesome t-shirts. And if, Rob, you want to give the people the link to those, because there's some really sick designs that you can have emblazoned on your chest like some sort of mad young fella. Yeah,
so Tim's a really good guy. He hooked us up back when we were like before the Gordo creation event. He was
the Divine Spark.
Yeah, the Divine Spark. He was before that, so he's one of the OGs, and we won't forget him for that. And it was really nice of him to send out those t-shirts. So and it also just so happens that he makes really cool Cryptid merchandise. So if you guys want to check out National Introvert Society, take a look. I actually model one of his t-shirts on our Instagram, Eamonn.
Oh, I know, Nessie, which is a really cool one. I got the Wendigo, so I'll pop that up when I get back home this weekend, and you and me hang out at a safe distance.
We'll do some a photo shoot. But so just a quick word on the Patreon. We have 5 tiers at the minute, and that's kind of what we're settling on for now. We have the Loch Ness Monster 350 tier. We have El Chupacabra, which is a €5 tier. Pansexual Yeti is the €10 tier, and that's my personal favorite because Eamonn used the Pansexual Yeti song, I think, on our Yeti episode, was it?
Jesus, I think so, yeah.
Yeah. So if you want to be a Pansexual Yeti, it'll cost you $10. And then you've got the Wendigo tier, which is actually really cool because the Wendigo tier will give you your own personalized cryptid song by none other than the Redness Eamonn, who is right here with us.
Now, what I'm going to try and do, because for Jimmy, Neve, and Bailey, and because we appreciate it so much, I am going to try and get a song together tomorrow. Now, it mightn't be recorded well, you know, it might just be a little MP3 on a phone. But if they leave that with me, I'll try put something together for them, and we can pop it out. Yeah, as a thank you for being the big three.
Yeah, so that's just our way of saying thanks. So the other cool thing about this tier is that it gives you access to your own private Discord. Now, every donation allows access to our private Discord, and that's the Monster Fuzz Mansion. That's where we all hang out. But if you donate 25 or over, you get exclusive access to a sub chat room, which is called Vanuatu Island, which is where Prince Philip is worshipped as a god, which brings us on to our final tier, which is the €30 per month tier, and it's called the Prince Philip tier. So keep that in mind, and it has everything, guys. You can take a look on our Patreon. It's patreon.com/monsterfuzz, and we're trying to update it as much as possible. We have a lot of plans on what we're going to add to it. So, let's just say you sign up for a $5 right now. Whatever we add to the $5 tier in the future will be retroactively added to you guys. So, poems or something that will probably be done at some point as well. We have a lot of big ideas for Patreon, don't we, further down the line?
Yeah, lots of stuff. I mean, we're talking about trying to get some little videos and stuff like that. It's just obviously right now with the world on lockdown, it's a bit trickier. But yeah, any kind of extra content we can make when we're hanging around together, we'll pump out as well. And I think the other thing as well is, certainly, man, appreciate so much anybody deciding to give a few shekels to the podcast. Really do appreciate it. The other thing is, again, just like if you can't, if you don't have the money, just a review on iTunes or a like, or just pass on a bit of word to your friends, that'd be greatly appreciated. So if you're enjoying it and you just can't part with cash for whatever reason, that's no problem. But just if you can help us try and grow the audience a little bit, that'd be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And also a special shout out as well to my girlfriend who also donated to our Patreon. It's like one of the things where you have to say like, thanks, Ma. But no, it's very, very nice to donate as well for that. Much appreciated. So we have 4 patrons, so we're in the big boys club now, right?
Yeah, well, it's certainly more money than I've made from anything else that I've ever done myself. So yeah.
Yeah. And one of the cool things about Patreon is you guys can ask us any questions, and for now they will be put at the start of every episode as they come in. But in the future, if we start getting like a semi-large amount of Patreons to where it becomes like time consuming to answer them all, we will do a special, possibly even a Patreon special episode where we just answer questions and have a bit of a back and forth without really any sort of subject matter. How does that sound?
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think we have some plans maybe to do some Patreon exclusive content when it gets a bit bigger, which is just, we were talking about, just a couple of articles that are coming out about UFOs or cryptids or whatever during the week. And we'll kind of back and forth them for a while. Still talking the same amount of muck, but just about articles rather than specific cryptids or whatever,
Yeah. So it's like the broader genre, I suppose you could say, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so with that, onto our first set of Patreon questions. And this one is from our good buddy Jimmy. Again, thank you, Jimmy. If you lads could be any cryptid, what would you be?
Any cryptid? What do you... can I guess what I think you would like to be?
Yeah.
I think you would like to be a dinosaur.
Yeah, probably Mokelemembe.
Yeah?
Like maybe, or maybe one of the more humanoid ones might be better for the purposes of the sort of functionality of it, because Gordo made a great point when I was trying to say like about spider people and turning androids into spiders, that the world is made for humans, so you have a very hard time navigating as a sauropod from the Congo. So like you'd be very limited. So maybe something like a skinwalker. I don't know. How about you?
Yeah, do you know, because I know we're going to be recording Skinwalker this week as well. So I think the Skinwalker, the only problem with the Skinwalker is that you have to keep like killing people and be basically a really evil human. There is one cryptid, right? And I can't remember its name. It's Portuguese name, but it's basically a pink dolphin. Okay. And the story of it is that when a woman gets pregnant and it's not her husband, they had an excuse in Brazil, which was basically like, oh no, the pink dolphin had sex with me, so it seduced women into the water. And then they would like sleep with the pink dolphin and have a kid. It definitely wasn't an excuse to be used when you were just off riding the fella down the road or whatever.
Right.
So yeah, I think if I was a sexy pink dolphin, then maybe that would be my cryptid of choice.
Yeah, sexy pink dolphin sounds like a very good choice. So
that would be cool as well. They could make a good show about us, Mekele and Membe and the sexy pink dolphin, and we both just hang around. But like, you'd have to protect me because I'd be getting into trouble for sleeping with all these women outside of their marriages.
I could pick you up on with my neck, and I could like lower you into women's bedrooms. So like I could like insert you into like raunchy scenarios and then pick you up and bring you back into the ocean.
Yeah, I think that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah. So that's definitely one.
So like, we'd be like Keenan and Kel of the cryptid world.
Yeah. So we hope that answers your question, Jimmy. And from Bailey, then he asks, "What are your favorite cryptid and folk tales?" You can take that one
That's
first.
an interesting one. So, I think I've got kind of two. There's one story I have about. There was an old couple sitting on their porch. It was quite dark. I think they were just like having a drink or something before bed. Lived in the rural sort of back country of America, and they could hear all these like weird sounds or whatever. So the husband picks up his flashlight and kind of shined it out onto the ranch or wherever they were, but it was pretty kind of open land. And there was a pack of wolves walking on two legs going towards them. And as soon as the wolves noticed that they had seen them, they all sort of dropped down to their all fours and just kind of scurried off, Right. But I think when I heard it, it was they were talking about dog men. Right. I suppose you could also say potentially skinwalkers and stuff like that, werewolves. But it was a pretty cool story, and the way it was told was like quite. You
don't have any pointers as to how people could find that story, maybe?
It's on an episode of the Higher Side Chats, which is primarily like a conspiracy podcast.
Right.
It's one of the earlier episodes. I believe the lady's first name who wrote this book about monsters in the USA was Linda, but it's years since I looked at it. But I'll try to find out and stick it in the Discord anyway, so people can take a look at it.
I think actually part of that question was like, what's our favorite cryptid, full stop as well, by the way. So do you have a favorite cryptid?
I'm very fond of the Mothman, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, he's your fave for sure. I think mine is Mokele Membe.
Yeah.
I think for sure. I think he was one of the ones that he was like a gateway cryptid drug for me, because like I had always known about Sasquatch and Yetis and things like that, but when I heard about Mokele Membe, I was like, I was a teenager, and I was like, oh, this is really cool. Like that, like I want this to be true.
Do you know that David Cho, he went into the Congo looking for Mokele Membe?
Yeah, I see him say that.
Yeah, it's madness.
He's a cool dude, him.
He is.
And folktales, I don't know. I like I like some of the tales that come with the cryptids more so than anything. Like I really like I think Bailey might be from like the Isle of Wight or Man. I always get the two of them mixed up. But he's from one of those islands, I think, and he probably is familiar with Selkie stuff, and I really like the Selkie tales and stuff like that. There's really interesting stories about. And if you're not familiar with Selkies, they're half woman, half seal, half man, half seal, basically kind of like mermaids, kind of not. There's some really cool stories about them in Irish mythology as well as like Scottish and things like that. So I like some of them tales. I think they're really cool. I don't really have any pointers to specific ones, but if you Google them, you'll find them. There's lots out there. And last up then is from Neve, and she asks, what do we do for work, Eamon?
This podcast. So for me,
it's all very mundane as well. Like it's not like we do anything.
Yeah, it's not. We don't do anything exciting. Basically working in an office, managing a small team of people, and just sort of involved in service improvement and.
It's like Chandler out of Friends.
Yeah, no one knows what I do, but I am doing it from 9 to 5 every day, So, but yeah, it's a real kind of basic. I really like the job. I like the company and all that. I don't want to get into too many specifics, but about exactly what floor I work on at the time I take my PPS number. What time
I was on the side do a bag of hot shit.
Yeah, well, look, it wouldn't be the first time you've done that. So that'd be, that's what I do. Just a 9 to 5 office monkey.
Yeah, and
what about yourself?
So for work, I'm a family carer. So basically, what that means is I look after family members full time. So in Ireland, you know, that people know what a family carer is, but if you're not from Ireland, you might not know. It's sort of, it's basically our government gives you money to look after family members is essentially the way it is. And yeah, in my case, it's my grandparents. So that's what I do. Before that, I was a chef. And if you're wondering sort of maybe that how me and Eamon can sort of interact quite smoothly on a podcast, because it isn't very easy to get into just without any prior experience. I think it can be quite awkward. Eamon comes from like doing a bit of stuff with conspiracy guys, and even from doing that, Eamon, you like probably from when you started to where you are now with it, you probably feel a lot more confident in front of a mic, do you, in terms of talking?
Yeah. I think that's part of it. The other part is just having been in bands since I was a teenager and played music sort of semi-professionally for a while and stuff. Like that was, you know, not that I've definitely need a few drinks before I get on stage just to settle the nerves, but I'm kind of used to it, you know, and used to just fucking doing stuff off the cuff. And that's, I think, the poem, when you do a poem, I sort of make one up to go back to our channel, as it were. That's a big part of that, is just from trying to make our own music for years and just trying to make words on the spot with a melody, you know. So I think that's sort of coming from there, you know. Yeah, and I have done like probably, I don't know, I think I did 500 YouTube episodes, and I live streamed a bunch on Twitch and stuff. So like it's not something that's alien to me at all. I've had like 3 YouTube channels, and I've done a whole heap of this type of stuff. So yeah, it's we're both used to it, suffice it to say. So and that's about it. But before we get into it, I was just wanting to ask you, Eamon, we had a suggestion from one of our Patreons to just like have a bit of a back and forth before we get into an episode. So I think, you know, we're so far into lockdown now, and it's not really lockdown anymore in a sense. It's more just become this sort of overbearing type of environment around everyone. It's this kind of, you know, there's like an air of gentle oppression on our shoulders. And how have you been coping with that? Have you had any rough moments? Have you been okay with it? Does it enter your psyche much at all? Not too much. The only thing that I found with lockdown is I probably drink a lot more now than I used to, which is bad, because I probably drank a good bit back then too. But it's like I found that because you wake up, your office is in your room. Like I've never stopped working over lockdown as well. I've had to, you know, we've always had stuff going on. So I can get a little bit restless. A big thing for me was like, you know, I'm certainly not fucking buff by any means, but I used to go to the gym a couple of times a week, or go running or something like that. And I've been trying to kind of stay fit. So I'm doing a lot of cycling and running and, you know, some strength stuff, but it's really just body weight, you know, push-ups and all the rest of it. But definitely I've noticed that I could drink every day of the week, but not get hammered every day, but like I'll have, you know, 3 beers a night, and then one night I'll have like 10, and then I'll go back to 3, and then I'll kind of, I think it's not like I wouldn't, in the culture I'm from, I don't have a problem, but it has kind of made me think, well, why, like, what is it about you that you're not just happy to kind of not drink? Do you know what I mean? Like I'm not depressed or I'm no more depressed than usual, I suppose, you know? So yeah, it's one where I'm kind of going, Jesus, well, like is there something you're just not, what would you say? Addressing? Yeah, but I don't know what it is, and I know if I don't drink, nothing comes up or anything. But I think it might just be the fact that I like to have a drink, and I love just, man, playing some video games and having a couple of drinks. I'm like, you know, I'm really happy doing that. So it hasn't affected Eamon much, except he's become an alcoholic. And for myself, it hasn't really affected me much but sometimes I do get these waves of like dread where I see like an article and it's like, you know, for example, today, which is the 4th of August as we are recording, you guys will hear it a bit later, but the pubs in Ireland have stayed closed now till the end of August. It's just been announced. And, you know, for me, that doesn't affect me. I'm not a drinker. I don't really go out to the pubs or anything, but I just feel bad for everyone that is in that situation. And it's sort of,
It sort of makes it real. You're like, oh shit, this is actually reality. Because I think sometimes, you know, you get home, you get into your bubble, and you're able to distract yourself in a way that it doesn't really, you know, it can't penetrate your bubble, and you are comfortable enough. And we're all very fortunate in 2020 to where we have all the mod cons and we have all the dumb shit to really keep us occupied. And I think for me, one of the great godsends for me was to start the podcast. It was probably one of the best ideas, was to actually get this podcast up off the ground. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, 100%. Because it was like, you know, it was just something that I was down in Wexford, you were down in Wexford. I think the new Final Fantasy VII game came out, and we wound up like basically Rob picked it up for me because it was at Tesco's, you know, and this is, I think GameStop was closed at this point.
That's right. Yeah.
So Rob picked it up, dropped over. We were in the back garden having a cup of tea or whatever, and then we were just shooting the breeze, and we were like, yeah, well, we just do this for the crack because we both like cryptids and stuff. And yeah, man, it really grew legs. Like, I'm really happy with where it is right now.
Yeah, it's for me anyway. I am a person that if you haven't guessed from saying that I've had like 3 or 4 fucking YouTube channels. I like jumping around with creative things. My mind is always buzzing with different ideas of things to do, which is why I think this is great, and why I think Patreon is great. Is when I looked at Patreon and I said, oh shit, there's so many possibilities we can have fun with in the future, and we'll have an audience that digs it, hopefully. So I think that's great, and I would actually implore anyone who wants to do anything creative like that, or maybe wants to do a podcast, or maybe wants to do YouTube or anything like that, just put yourself out there, because I know a lot of people are like afraid of putting themselves out there, but at the end of the day, no one gives a shit. Like, when you first do something, no one's going to pay attention anyway, is the first thing. Like, you're going to be talking to yourself for a long time, and you just have to be prepared for that, and that's part of it as well. You just have to be ready for the grind, ready for the slog. I did YouTube for 2 years of getting like 5 to 10 views a video, 20 views a video, before it picked up on YouTube. And you know, it's worth it. And, you know, everyone has their different reasons. I personally do podcasts because I want to share what I like with other people. Some people say, oh, it's not about the views and it's not about the listens, this and that, but that's not true for me. I think it's a good metric, and if people like what I like and I'm putting it out there, then I think that's good. And we have like-minded individuals and all that. And I think a lot of people that say, oh, the listens or views don't matter, are people that are just, you know, have their head up their hole, basically.
Oh, well, that's it. Like, it's really good fun. It's just, I suppose it's like anything. You're encouraged when like people seem to enjoy it or whatever. That's a really cool feeling. And look, it's no different to anything else. Like, I used to draw for years. I've written a book, but I, couldn't get it off the ground. Yeah, I know. Look, that could be a Patreon thing as well. Like, I'll give that bitch away for free. That's yeah. You don't even just email if you want it, and we'll give you the book.
Eamonn sleeps on a bed of them books.
yeah, a metaphorical bed of broken dreams and torn paper. But like totally, like I suppose everything that you try to achieve. And I'm not saying that like I have achieved anything fucking that's amazing. Not at all, man. The fact that I'm still alive is an achievement in itself. But like there was loads of stuff I did, whether it was drawing or writing or whatever. And I don't know if I ever really took it super seriously, but I would have liked to try and have, I would have loved to have been a writer for a career or whatever. But it wasn't to be, and that's probably part of my own fault for not trying hard enough, and part of just that circumstance. But yeah, it's I think you get a lot from failure and from not hitting the mark. You wind up actually, getting a lot of insight about yourself, what you can change, what you can do,
and just knowing about like just about things, about yourself and things that you like, and sometimes things just don't work. Like, sometimes you'll get into something and you're like, oh, this is great, but it doesn't work anymore for you, and you have to move on. Like, one of the big ones for me is during lockdown, I haven't been able to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu because I am a carer for my grandparents. So it's a very high risk thing for me. I can't go into the gym, and I would if I wasn't doing that. I wouldn't really give a shit. I'm not afraid of coronavirus by any means. It's just for their sake. I can't really justify if my granddad was up in the hospital bed and I was like, oh lol, sorry granddad, I had to fucking go and choke some cunt out there last week, so I hope you don't mind. So I have to be, a bit sensible. So I've had to give that up, and allowed me to pursue this, I suppose, more. It's given me more free time, and I'm enjoying doing this as well. So you just keep moving, just keep trying different shit. I've tried no end of stuff, and yeah, if you ever do feel the need to put yourself out there, by all means do, because at the end of the day, no one does really care. So
yeah, and do remember as well, if coronavirus has taught us anything, it's that something can happen and take away everything you work for. Like, I spent a lot of time, and one of the reasons that I didn't stay in those conspiracy guys was because my workload for my job was so heavy at the time that I wasn't able to. And this is at a time when I was like, I think it was 29 or 30. I had never really had a career. I'd always worked, but I'd never had something, in a structure, I suppose, that I could grow at. And so I really put, Jesus Christ, like I put a lot of work into just, trying to be a good employee and blah, blah, blah. And basically doing what fathers in the 1950s did. Even though I'm not a father, and I don't really hope to be either. But yeah, so that was like, like definitely I made some mistakes there, and I made some good yields there and everything, but it's one of those things where whether it's your work, as long as you're just doing something and enjoying yourself. And then with Corona as well, it could have easily been that I was in an industry that couldn't survive this pandemic. I've been fortunate that I'm not, but there's a lot of people out there, especially you talk about pubs not opening. Look at all the people, man, that want to get back to work, that are barmen, that are waiter staff, anything like that. Or, you know what I mean?
Old men that go to a rural pub, once a night, and it's like their social meeting. And even if they don't talk to anyone, that's their social, like that gives them their social needs,
Exactly, yeah, exactly.
And those guys aren't getting that.
What I would say is, if there's something that you really want to do, give it a shot, and if it feels right and you're enjoying it and you want to keep doing it, then just keep doing it, because a virus like this can come and take away everything that you work so hard for. So do you know what I mean? Don't not do anything because you're afraid it mightn't work out. Like, fucking go down in a big blaze of glory if it doesn't work out for you, but just remember that, who knows when your time is. So anything that you really want to do, I think you should do it with to the best of your ability, or to the best that you are able to if you want to go travel around the world, obviously that's quite expensive, but
I'm not really the best at the minute.
It's not a great idea right now. But like, just if that's something that's really important to you, don't put shit that you don't really care about in front of that. Well, yeah, what I'm trying to get at basically is that what has helped my mental health throughout lockdown is creative endeavors, and it's something that's helped my brain for a long time. And I didn't realize that, like, it's not like I've been doing this all my life. I haven't been an arty person my whole life. It was something that I realized later on in my mid-20s, was that I enjoyed putting myself out there in a creative way. And that was after a long time of not realizing that. So, if you're feeling a bit down, or there's something that you would really like to give it a go. And if you're not creative, not everyone's creative, maybe you might like, keeping fit or doing something like that, or, just any outlet is good. So if you're feeling shit, it's always worth investigating and seeing and trying different things and totally, find a fit. Even they say, when you're feeling madly depressed or something like that, anxious or whatever the feeling is that comes up, to actually sit down and just journal it, just write down, how you're feeling, more often than not, it actually does help get some of that tension out. But it's funny you're talking about creative endeavors and stuff. I have a picture of Akuma and Ryu in front of me that I drew and just stuck on my wall because I was like bored. But I think they're probably two of the best Street Fighter pictures that I've ever done in my life. So basically, when I'd be at work, while I'd be on conference calls and everyone's talking, I'm just doing, and I'm paying attention and listening, but like also just drawing because everyone's talking or whatever. And I've really enjoyed actually sketching. I drew some, I think you saw some of the pictures. I drew one of Cloud Strife.
I did, yeah.
As well. So I've just been getting back into drawing because I used to love it so much when I was younger. And again, I don't want anything from it. And I don't even, none of these are up on fucking Instagram or Facebook. But I just like sitting down, and I think it is sort of cathartic in a way,
Yeah. So that's basically it, guys. It was just a quick little thing. I think in future we'll probably add 10 minutes at the start, where Jimmy, actually our patron, suggested that we do a little bit of an intro talk again, and we do listen to our patrons, and that's something that we want to get across. So from now on, we'll do a little 10-minute thing. We'll try and keep it short. And if it is too long, we will put in a timestamp like we used to anyway. So just so you guys know what we're doing. But now, it's time for a brief overview of the Tikbalang.
Tikbalang.
Yeah, that's the proper pronunciation. I have a Filipino here, and he's just told me that it's Tikbalang is the proper pronunciation of it.
Okay.
And if you didn't guess, it's a Filipino folkloric creature. It's a humanoid horse. So it's a horse that stands on 2 feet like a man. So it's a big, according to the picture, which I will post on Instagram also, by the way, once the episode goes up, he's quite a muscly horseman. He's like BoJack Horseman on steroids.
It actually looks like the pictures you have here. The one on the left looks like it's kind of like a Japanese fucking
creepy
goan. Is that what they say? You know, the thing for Rudge and all that, but a horse. And then the one on the right looks like something that you drew like just when you were 7. And it also looks like the horse has high heels.
He's magnificent.
He has Tina Turner legs.
He's a magnificent
so it's like,
horse.
I don't think it's quite a horse, man. It's half horse and half man, half Tina Turner.
Yeah, he's magnificent. It's a very magnificent painting. But he has extremely long and spindly limbs, and he's generally taller than a human. And this guy hangs out in extremely dark forests, under bridges or mountains. Do you want to tell our listeners about Tagalog Superstition, Eamonn?
So Tagalog Superstition states that Tikbalangs are benevolent guardians of elemental kingdoms. They're usually found standing at the foot of large trees, basically looking around for anyone who's going to trespass onto the kingdom's territory. So acting almost as like a dragon in front of a castle, you know, or something like that. I love your next note where it just says, will fuck you up. Like there's no qualifying, just it will fuck you up.
Well, it's definitely got, you know, powerful legs and powerful hands, so chances are it's going to fuck you up. But unlike the Okapi, which is a beautiful zebra horse deer, the Tikbalang is a scary man horse Smeagol, or in some renditions it's known as man horse muscles. But it's definitely not beautiful like the zebra horse deer.
No,
it's not. But in northern regions, he's known as more of like a trickster who sort of plays tricks on you and stuff like that. But in the southern regions, he's known for glowing red eyes, stench of burning hair. He apparently actually smokes a cigar, the southern version of Tikbalang, and he will stomp you to death if you piss him off.
So here's the thing that might be interesting. Years ago, I went to Peru, and we went on this is like a 2 or 3 day sort of expedition, I suppose, where they show you these different places. And I kind of got on well with 2 of our the guys that were showing us around. They're not Sherpas, they're sort of. Yeah, it's the similar thing. I just can't, like, the guide, I suppose. There was maybe a Peruvian name that I can't remember,
right?
But one guy was called, there was Diego and Juanito.
Diego.
And Diego was cool, man. But he told me this story. He said on these mountains, there's a priest who apparently used to practice dark magic or whatever. And the more he did it, the more trenched in death magic that he became. And he now wanders the thing. So he's a man, he has like a priest's garb, and he has the head of a donkey. And it reminded me of this guy when I first saw the pictures. But he was telling me all these cool spooky stories, and over there they think tobacco is like a deterrent for the spirits. So he was saying like he was telling me about like weird spooky stuff, and
that one said that fags. Yeah, them lads love smoking fags.
Well, this is true. Well, but he was you know, the 2 guys were really just nice guys, easy going. And even when I was leaving, you know, because you kind of would be thinking maybe to just stay this shtick to all the tourists or whatever. But Juanito was a really kind of a gentle, nice guy. And after it, he came over to me and he just shook my hand. And he was just like, because I bought him a beer the night before or whatever to chat with him. And afterwards, he's like, I just want to tell you, you're like one of the nicest guys we've had up here. It was really nice to talk to you about all that stuff. Usually people just want to party and blah, blah, blah. But it was nice that you wanted to hear about our culture and all that sort of stuff. So they're really really nice guys.
I thought that was going to take a turn there somewhere a bit X-rated or something.
Well, you know what, man? If it had, I could have done worse than Juanito. Okay, I could have done worse than Juanito.
Juanito and Diego on the mountain.
The two lads were like built like rocks as well. They fucking 6-packs out the door and all this sort of stuff. Like they wouldn't be wasting time on a little pasty white Irish fella with a little belly drinking his fucking Peruvian Heineken or whatever they have over there.
Irish twink.
Yeah, just burning in the sun.
Speaking of priests, Eamonn, we've got a historical account of the Tikbalang from Father Juan de Plasencia. And he says that they greatly fear and reverence the Tikbalang or Bibit. This is a ghost, goblin, or devil. And as it knows the cowardice of these Indians, it has been known to appear to them in the mountains, now in the guise of an old man, telling them that he is their nono, now as a horse and now as a monster. Consequently, the Indians in terror make various pacts with it and trade their rosaries and various articles of superstitious value, such as hairs, grass, stones, and other things, in order to obtain all their intents and free themselves from all the dangers. Thus do they live in delusion until God wills that the evangelical ministers undeceive them, which costs no little effort because of their very great fear with which they are filled. So how do you reckon priests undeceive the mighty Tikbalang?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. It sounds as if Father Juan Plasencia was writing that after he had a few old cups of the holy wine. It's obviously it's an older. Yeah, it must be either a strange translation or it's more of a historical, the first historical account. So yeah, it must be quite an old text. How the priests undeceive the mighty Tigbolan?
Yeah, it's a very weird wording there, and I sort of asked that question intentionally. Like, do the priests sort of remove, like, how do you reckon they removed the fear of the Tikbalang? Is basically the question.
I would imagine, again, I'm not sure if this is translation or the the vernacular back at the time, but I would imagine that to undeceive would probably be to, like, deception is linked with the devil, with Satan. He deceives, he is the deceiver in a lot of texts. Whereas faith, the opposite of that is God, is the way, is following in Jesus's footsteps. So I would reckon if they're undeceiving the mighty Tikbalang, they're putting their faith in the hands of God or whatever. Or again, that's the way I'm reading into it, but I have no idea if I'm right.
Yeah, I like to think that they basically outwitted the villagers into believing God rather than Tikbalang, because it looks like they believed heavily in the Tikbalang up until religion came along, and so it was sort of this religion versus superstition type of battle. So like Tikbalang was fighting Jesus Christ up in the clouds. In a 5-round UFC cage fight, like
a champion belt. Like, what weight class do you think Tikbalang and Jesus would fight at? Because Jesus is probably, say Jesus is a welter.
It's an open weight for sure. So like,
okay,
it has to be just
catch weight bout.
It'll just have to be like, because Tikbalang is going to be like 360 pound or something. He's going to be like 500 pound. He's going to be, he's a handful of trouble. But Jesus would be able to stick and move. I don't know if you've ever seen that clip of Conor McGregor sparring with the mountain. You ever see that? From Game of Thrones?
Oh, from Game of Thrones. Sorry, I have. I thought you meant an actual mountain. I was like, no.
Conor McGregor on all fours just punching a mountain for an hour.
You'll do fucking nothing. You do nothing. I have seen him with the mountain.
Yeah. So I think it'd look a lot like that, except in robes. And I think it'd probably be a good fight for sure. I'd get it on pay-per-view, I think. But do you want to tell people about Francisco de Santonio, who is another father who was in the area also?
Yeah, so he says, the Tikbalang is another object of which they stand in great awe. It is described as a phantom, which assumes a variety of uncouth and monstrous shapes, and interposes its authority to prevent their performing the duties prescribed by our religion, which is interesting. This would make you think that it's a sort of a demon, I suppose.
Yeah, and what are the duties that are prescribed by religion? Like, what is it preventing people from doing?
I would imagine, again, this is like what, the 18th century they're talking about here?
1738.
Yeah, so I would say that what they're talking about there is temptation. If the Tikbalang is associated with the devil, and the devil tempts people to do wrong things and blah blah blah. Mm-hmm. The prescription of religion, and especially it's Catholic religion, I'd imagine, is to do good and have faith, So I would imagine maybe the Tikbalang is associated with the antithesis of that. It would be interesting actually to see, there's Valak and Baal and all those other Bazuzu, I think, is another one. That was a demon from The Exorcist, actually. But I think it is like it's in the texts as one of the demons. If the Tikbalang is actually, if there's a horseman demon in Catholic, in the Catholic scriptures, so it could be that they're kind of talking about that, but they're just using a different archetype or a different word to describe the same archetype. Yeah,
so you're saying that like it sort of crossed over into Catholicism as well, but I don't know. I think Tikbalang was kind of a proto religious entity for the Filipino people, and I think that to do some of the what Catholicism asked of them would interfere with Tikbalang's thing. So they had to, they couldn't please both. So I think the priests were actually at war with the people to try and say, like, here, it don't matter about that fucking Tikbalang fella. Fuck him. He's in Egypt. Like, come over here to Jesus Christ and follow us. I think Filipino villagers were probably afraid of making the jump to Catholicism because of Tikbalang as well. Like, they were probably in awe of Tikbalang because Filipino culture is very superstitious and has a lot of these cryptids. There's like 10 to 15 really interesting cryptids that I will definitely do at some point. There's a lot of them that are really cool, and most of them actually involve aborted fetuses or something.
Okay, right.
So yeah, there a lot of Filipino sort of proto-religious stuff is all aborted fetuses, cryptids that attack women, come to attack pregnant women. So it's all very to do with pregnancy and conception and all this.
So maybe the transgression there, like where Wendigo and stuff, is cannibalism. The transgression here is aborting, like unborn babies or whatever. I wonder if that was something in the history of the Philippines where that may have been happening, and this was sort of to try to counteract it, maybe.
Yeah. Well, there wasn't any Planned Parenthoods or anything in the Philippines in the 1700s.
No.
So, I mean, it could be, but also it could be just something more. It might be something to do with just having children out of wedlock and things like that. I think one of them was to do with like virgins in specific, like were at risk if they played a foul and all this type of thing. There was all of this. Sort of, I suppose, what you could say, scaremongering stories and things.
Yeah.
We'll definitely get into them in the future. But the early origins of Tikbalang is that he comes from Hinduism, I suppose, and his precursor is a guy called Hayagriva, and he's a horse-headed avatar of Vishnu that our Hindu brothers are absolutely mad for. They love horse people and all that. So, and he's got like multiple arms and stuff. He's an interesting character to look up. The form of the Tikbalang that we know traces back 4,000 years ago with roots in Hinduism, which explain how that influence evolved today into the mysterious half-horse creature. However, it should be noted, and this is what you were saying a little bit earlier there, Eamonn, that human-horse hybrids are present in lots of different cultures. So.
Yeah.
In Greek mythology, we have the centaur. You're sure you remember the centaur?
I think he's probably the most popular of all the horse-human hybrids.
Yeah, and unlike Tikbalang, so if you want to visualize Tikbalang, horse head, maybe the centaur's bottom half, except he doesn't have 4 legs, he just has the 2 legs. So that'll help you visualize him. And then this is a really interesting one that I had never heard of. Had you heard of this guy?
The Nuka-Levi. No, I never heard of this guy before.
Nuka-Lavi probably, is it?
Nuka-Lavi, yeah, I'd say you're probably right. I have a weird tendency to over-pronounce A vowels if I don't know the word.
Yeah.
I don't know why, it's a strange thing. But this guy in Celtic mythology, he's a horse-like demon with a skinless humanoid creature that's fused to it. So I suppose, Rob, how would you describe this guy? Based on the picture.
Yeah, he's basically a skeletal horse, really scary looking skeletal horse, and then the body is like that of a white, or like imagine a White Walker actually from Game of Thrones. It's a sort of a reference everyone would get.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, he's stuck to the top of him, right?
Yeah, exactly. It actually looks, it's kind of reminiscent of a boss of Dark Souls, or kind of, well, not an actual boss of Dark Souls, but the kind of enemy you might face in Dark Souls, you know, a giant horse with a body, with a torso fused to it with a sword, you know.
Yeah.
And the face, the kind of skull face is like the face of the thing itself. The human part is quite terrifying.
His breath, this Nukkalavi and something like that. It's probably Nukkalavi, I don't know. The breath of this creature is so bad that it can wither entire crops and sicken livestock. So this guy was kind of like the harbinger of like the famine or whatever. So it's quite spooky. But why do you reckon, Eamon, in history we have this sort of mix of human horse hybrids? Like, do you have any theory on why that is specifically? Because they're kind of a weird thing.
The only thing that I can think of is that, say, knights would have been associated with horses, so we would have done a lot of war on horseback.
It's a good shout.
Yeah, that's the first thing coming to mind. And these are sort of like, I suppose these are more mythological versions of that, because they're the men and the horse fused together. And I'd imagine, and again, I'm not sure, but if, you know, I'd say a knight maybe had a special relationship with, you know, the sort of like, here's his stallion or whatever, and it's the one that he always goes into battle with. And maybe there's some sort of connection that happens if you're with the same horse and you're riding the same horse, you know, living through effectively skirmishes with the same horse, and, you know, a bond would develop. So they cut out the separation between the horse and the man, and maybe as in myth they see them as one warrior, you know.
Yeah, juxtaposed them and the lines bled through. But yeah, we have a possible explanation from the Filipino angle, which is ancient people in the Philippines. This is actually really cool. They believed in animism. They believed that the world had its consciousness, and that stones, trees, mountains, water, animals, sun, and the moon had a hidden power known as the spirit, or the idol. This power could be good or harm the spirit, but it was believed to control some aspects of like life. I really enjoy that. It's basically respect everything, really.
Yeah, and what was really interesting, I was reading this earlier. So it's basically the idea that, let's say, at a very fundamental level, they're basically saying there's energy in everything, or there's some sort of spirit, whether it's in stones or the sea or the clouds, right? And this sounds like a pretty woo-woo idea, right? However, enter panpsychism. Okay, so I'm going to read like a definition of panpsychism, which is probably going to be difficult to follow, and then I'm going to just sort of give you the layman's terms. And the reason I'm saying that is because when I read it, I was like, what the fuck are they talking about? Listen to 2 or 3 podcasts and now have a very sort of layman's term, you know, an ignorant way of describing it. So I'll read this out, and then I'll try to get into a bit more into the kind of the fundamentals of it. And again, it's just because this sounds like a very kind of Avatar type thing, you know, this, like, there's spirit and everything, but this is a philosophical principle that's actually, I think Rupert Sheldrake is talks about this a lot. So it's actually, you know, it's a big philosophical idea at the moment. So basically, panpsychism is the view that mentality is fundamental and ubiquitous in the natural world. The view has a long and venerable history in philosophical traditions of both East and West, and has recently enjoyed a revival in analytic philosophy. For its proponents, panpsychism offers an attractive middle way between physicalism on the one hand and dualism on the other. The worry with dualism, the view that mind and matter are fundamentally different kinds of thing, is that it leaves us with a radically disunified picture of nature and the deep difficulty of understanding how mind and brain interact. And whilst physicalism offers a simple and unified version of the world, this is arguably at the cost of being unable to give a satisfactory account of the emergence of human and animal consciousness. Panpsychism, strange as it may sound on first hearing, promises a satisfying account of the human mind within a unified conception of nature. So that's a lot to take in a paragraph.
Yeah, I don't know any whatever was going on there. It was off playing like Mario in my head.
Bop, 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 bop. So basically, the way to think about it is science is quantitative. So science is basically you get a theory.
So that
Sorry.
Is that science is quantitative? Is that means? Well, what does quantitative
exactly
mean? Is a sum of the science or whatever? Is that what that's?
Exactly. It's like you have to get the numbers to equal the answer, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Whereas consciousness is qualitative. So, for example, the science is there; you can sort of touch it.
Yeah.
Until it gets really theoretical. Mm-hmm. Whereas consciousness are thoughts, whims,
theories,
feelings,
ideas.
That's in the ether, so we can't measure it. So science tends to take a material view, which means if it's not there, they just sort of omit it.
Yeah.
So philosophers like Rupert Sheldrake, they're popularizing this panpsychism. So it's basically like the best way to describe it that I've come across is basically saying, in the material world, right, they're saying everything is just a thing. Everything is matter, okay? Right. But that doesn't account for consciousness.
Right.
In that consciousness isn't matter. So how can consciousness emerge from something that has no consciousness? So they would say, like, for example, atoms don't have consciousness. So we would say, okay, well, at what point then does consciousness emerge? Like, why do we have consciousness when atoms don't have consciousness? And so basically what panpsychism says is that the mind is everywhere, but it just might be in ways that we don't fully understand.
Yeah, you could say, like, a good analogy for it maybe would be that in a grain of sand, there's a speck of consciousness, and then it forms together with all these other grains of sand to make a sum of something, a total. Or like, there's parts of us that are water. There's parts of us that are like our fingernails are keratin and things like that, and that's in other things, and all of those little atoms, not atoms, but all them little things have basically a soul or a consciousness.
Yeah, and so basically they're saying everything has consciousness. So your atom has consciousness, but it might not be, for example, it has no nervous system, so it couldn't say feel pain or have the kind of rich tapestry of emotions or thoughts that a human might have. However, it might have something else that's hard for us to understand because, to quote Shakespeare and King Lear and the materialists, nothing comes of nothing. Try again. Which basically means we can't get consciousness from things that don't have consciousness. And it would also maybe bring up bigger ideas about can echoes, so we talk about ghosts and blah, blah, blah. Is that echoes of consciousness, and they're in the brick, they're in the mortar, they're in the ground. We talk about liminal spaces and all that sort of stuff. So I don't know much about it. That's just like maybe a 2-hour me looking at it and trying to figure it out and break it down. And I hope I've made some sort of sense out of it. It's
you have done. I think
tricky.
I think everyone can understand that the idea that everything has something, and then maybe when it's put together in a certain way, it gives it more depth or less depth or whatever. It might be a way to sort of sum it up. I think that for me at least it made sense in my head that way, that it was just it was sort of easy at that point. But it's an interesting theory, and I really like it because it basically teaches respect of everything around you.
Well, I think the really good thing is, people say, what's the point in protecting the environment or protecting anything? And most often people go, well, we need to protect it because, the future humans will need it and they can assign value to it. But if everything has consciousness on some level, then there's value in everything.
Yeah.
It's just a different type of value, which, and as well, what's really interesting is this idea, you see a lot of stuff like this, like those ideas of we are all one, the Buddhist mentality. And and it's and a lot of those things, like the eye being a pathway to the soul, us all being one. These are things that would have been said, for thousands of years before they actually start to be proven. Like apparently, as your neofrontal cortex develops, it causes spikes in your iris, or your pupil rather. So the sort of color and the design or the pattern in your eye. So if you think that the way we understand it, the neofrontal cortex is the thinking part, it's the soul, it's the personality. It turns out that the eyes actually do have some sort of an indent on that, or have been indented by that, which is really interesting, that these things that we had no way of proving years ago, there was almost like a wisdom that people had, that they could understand it in some way,
Well, yeah, so it's really a really interesting thought that always trips me out, is just that, like, every animal views the world through different eyes, like, and their reality is totally different to our reality. So, like, we look at all these things that we've made in our constructs, and we've gone, okay, this is that, and that's this, and this is how that looks to us. But different animals look at those things totally differently, with a whole different idea behind it. So it's an interesting thing. It's a little trip out type of stoner thought, I suppose you could say.
Two lads that used to smoke hash talking about a panpsychism together.
Are we now panpsychists? Is that what we can say we are?
Panpsychist Yeti. Panpsychist Yetis. I think we're...
Panpsychist is like you're like €150 tier. You've transcended into panpsychism.
With panpsychist, there is no money. There's no Patreon. You're just looking down on the podcast like fucking Salvador Dali's picture of Christ on the cross.
If you were a rock and you had consciousness, how pissed off would or wouldn't you be?
Depends what the other rocks were like, I suppose. So, you know what I mean? Like, if I was a rock on a riverbed and all the other rocks were pretty cool, we're all smooth, kind of cool, jazzy rocks, and we're just hanging out together, like, and we're beatboxing with the sound of the stream, like a little rap group. I think I could get with that.
But, like, do you know the way, like, there's humans who were born, say, in the desert, there's humans that are born here in Ireland. It's quite a temperate climate, and some people that are born in the desert are like, I have to move out of here and go to, like, a more temperate place, and vice versa. What if you're a rock and you are birthed into consciousness and you're at the bottom of a river and you want to be a rock on top of a mountain, and basically your whole conscious life is drowning under a perpetual torrent of water?
Well, I suppose maybe the river at some point will erode you to nothing. Here it is. You ready? All right. So the river will erode you, grind you down, okay?
Okay.
But that erosion that leaves what you once were will get swept down with the river downstream. It will eventually evaporate up into the clouds and at some point be poured onto the top of a mountain.
Yes, or...
No. Make it be nice for the pebble.
No. I'm with you. No, the pebble might get ground up into sand. Do you see where I'm going here?
I get you.
And he might get washed up on a beach, and he will have multiplied. So he will go from one solitary pebble, and he will split into 3,000 grains of sand that can all individually bask on the beach. Check it out.
Yeah, I like that. I think no matter what way you cut it, that's a nice way of a rock with notions, I suppose. that's a nice way of having their story told.
The little rock that could. That was a good one. I enjoyed that little tangent there. But a little bit more on animism before we disappear from this whole concept. Sorry for the farty chair, folks. Animism is the belief that's like a comedy chair. Animism is the belief that objects, places, and creatures all possess a distinct spiritual essence. Potentially, animism perceives all things, animals, plants, rocks, rivers, weather systems, human handiwork, and perhaps even words, as animated and alive. Animism is used in the anthropology of religion as a term for the belief system of many indigenous peoples, especially in contrast to the relatively more recent development of organized religions. It almost sounds, in my research, that organized religion was using animism as sort of a pejorative term. It was like a dirty word to them.
Yeah, I think you're right. You see, a lot of organized religion is built on a hierarchy of power. Like the Pope wields the most power in the Catholic Church, they'd have you believe. And I'm sure that's probably true. But something like this, when everything possesses mentality or some sort of consciousness or some sort of energy, then nothing does. There is no power. Everything is one. Yeah. And whether, you know, you perceive yourself as having a lot of power, you're effectively no different from a dog or a rock at the bottom of a riverbed. And that takes, you know, that takes the egoic power away from people who want to have power structures. So I can kind of get why organized religion would try to get rid of it. To me, I think animism, panpsychism, I love that idea. Like, I really like that. It just seems open and free and whatever, you know. And
it's open to interpretation. It's a nice way to do things. And in a way, I sort of took from this that perhaps early religions, more organized religions, basically exploited people's views of animism. Like they seen that people had faith in animals, plants, rocks, rivers, weather systems, all of this stuff, and they twisted it in a narrative that could serve their purpose rather than a more sort of general purpose of being one with the jungle or one with whatever their tribe were. So it's a shame. That's what it kind of looks like to me anyway. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I would say the same. I'd say they took away the natural kinship that maybe more tribal people had with the land, because I mean, effectively there is no difference between the land and the people and the animals, you know. That kind of way they live, like they're all part of the one, what would you say, biodiversity, let's call it that. So I think a lot of these power structures have, no different to our own society, have taken us away from things that are intrinsic to our spirits. And you know, we're removed from it. I think that's why people in developed countries are so fucking miserable, and I don't think we're supposed to live like this at all, but it's very hard to find an alternative, you know.
Well, that's it.
And Final Fantasy 7 was deadly. Like
Final Fantasy 7 had the live stream, which is very similar to animism. So it's definitely worth checking out for that. But although each culture has its own different mythologies and rituals, animism is said to describe the most common foundational thread of indigenous people's spiritual or supernatural perspectives. So it's right at the bottom. It's maybe what was that cloud? Maybe that was something, or that was a god, or is this rain? This rain has been made by someone because we did something. That's all kind of animism, I suppose. The animistic perspective is so widely held and inherent to most indigenous peoples that they often do not even have a word in their languages that corresponds to animism or even religion. The term is an anthropological construct. So really interesting stuff that tribes, without any interference, without anything, will believe in some type of other power regardless of any influences. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's one of those things as well we talked about in the Mekele and Bebe episode, a lot of the Congolese tribes, where for them there's no differentiation between spirit and physical. So they would talk about their history and say sort of like folklore, that obviously we would say Cuchulainn, while he may have been, you know, based on some sort of a real person in Irish folklore, he wouldn't have like been able to turn into a monster or run through a forest without stepping on a branch and all that sort of stuff, you know. But for more tribal people, they don't differentiate between folklore, spirit, and so there's basically no materialist versus spirit. It's all just meshed into one, much like panpsychism. So maybe just a way of thinking about things that our Western heads can't really comprehend, you know?
Yeah. Do you want to talk about how proto-religion and animism actually ties in with the Tikbalang?
Yeah, absolutely. So Hinduism spread through Asia via trade. So the idea is that Tikbalang may have originated in Hayagriva.
From Hayagriva, the avatar.
Or from Hayagriva, the avatar of the Hindu god Vishnu. The worship of Hayagriva was recorded in 2000 BC. So basically a long time. It's reckoned that Tikbalang showed up in the
Philippines.
Sorry, yeah, I had to swallow a fucking tickle in my throat there. Sorry, yeah. Showed up in the Philippines when Chinese settlers brought horses with them during trading events, because there were no native horses in the Philippines prior to this. So I suppose the idea is if there's no horse, there's no Tikbalang. And where does that originate from? You know, is this the crux of it?
Yeah. Well, it seems that way, at least, that the Tikbalang was a more recent superstitious thing. But also, I mean, look, if you're believing in cryptids and mythological creatures, I don't think a time frame is really essential. I think a lot of the time with cryptids, you sort of assume that they've been here since the dawn of time. But I don't think that necessarily has to be true either. If you want to believe in more mental shit, like, you know, believing in something, creating it, that type of thing, where it actually manifests because so many people believe in it, things like that.
That's the tulpa and There's even some ideas, I don't know if you've heard the Slender Man, where people report actually seeing it in real life.
Yeah.
You know, and it was obviously born from an internet meme.
Yeah, the Slender Man's a really funny one because, like, I remember its birth, and perhaps in like 40 years' time, there'll be two Robin Eamons talking about the Slender Man, as if, like, you know, it was like this type of real thing that happened. So very interesting.
Probably be Robin Eamon at fucking
Robin Eamon. Yeah, as we're sitting on our patio recording the podcast. But yeah, we have all this lore about the Tikbalang. We know sort of the rough idea of it. What does the Tikbalang actually do? So the Tikbalang, or Tigbolan or Tigbolan, it scares travelers, really. It's there to lead them astray and play tricks on them, such as making them return to an arbitrary path no matter how far they go or turn. So it basically just arses around with you in the jungle. Like if you get lost, he's like, oh yeah, go this way, that's the way home, and you go that way, and then he pops back out of the bush and goes, haha, you stupid cunt, you've been going the same way all along. And he jumps back into the bush, and then, you know, you walk another way. Do you know, like, actually there's a part of Final Fantasy VII where you do that, where you get lost in the snow and you keep going around. It's basically
this is the first time we've hyper referenced Final Fantasy VII. This has been months in the making.
So yeah, basically what I did was I googled what cryptid can make me reference as many Final Fantasy VII things as possible, and then Tikbalang came up in that, and that's yeah.
Well, it's funny because the next episode we're going to record is the Skinwalker, and I have an entire paragraph about how the Skinwalker might have been at Cosmo Canyon on the first disc. So
there you go. So there you heard it there first. But how do you stop the Tikbalang from actually tricking you with his wily ways?
Well, apparently, if you wear your shirt inside out, that will stop the Tikbalang fucking sending you off in the wrong direction like a broken compass. Another countermeasure is to ask permission out loud to pass by, which I'd probably prefer to do rather than putting my shirt, rather than becoming a turncoat for the Tikbalang.
He sounds like a chap that would kind of pinch your ditties and all as you're trying to take your shirt off as well. They'd be like pinching your nipples.
Yeah, he's got that kind of Loki vibe, doesn't he? From, you know, like a trickster, sort of a messer. And then the other is, you know, make sure you don't produce too much noise while you're in the woods in order not to offend or disturb the Tikbalang.
Yeah, so basically, you know, the Tikbalang is, you know, you have to respect them. And also, yeah, he's that's the nice version of the Tikbalang, but the southern version smokes cigars. He'll kick the shit out of you.
Right.
So if you come across him, it's not good. But there's also the Tigbolan. They kind of sound the same, but Tigbolan and Tikbalang are kind of slightly different. But the Tigbolan is a ghost which assumes a variety of forms and sometimes confers a similar gift upon a certain favored individual. A superstition popular with the Tagalogs of Rizal province is that Tikbalangs are benevolent guardians of elemental kingdoms. They are usually found standing at the foot of large trees, looking around for anyone who dares to bestow malignancy on the kingdom's territory. I like this Tikbalang.
Yeah. That sounds like like some lad who's just protecting the land, protecting the kingdom of providence.
Kind of like the weapons out of Final Fantasy VII.
Very good.
Yeah. So basically, you know, the Tikbalang in this instance is teaching you to respect the jungle, respect your environment, or you know, he's going to kick your ass. In some versions, he can transform himself into a human form, or turn invisible to humans. But yeah, he doesn't hurt or kill people. Like, at worst, he's just a trickery guy. That's the northern version. And do you want to say where you could find him and where he's associated with him?
Yeah, so he's generally associated with dark, sparsely populated, sort of foliage overgrown areas. And the legends variously identifying their abode as being beneath bridges, in bamboo clumps or banana groves, and atop Kalumpang, Sterculia foetida, or Balite ficus indica trees.
Yeah, it's a creepy looking tree, isn't it? The Tikbalang tree.
Well, I mean, I tell you, because it looks kind of like, again, I can't see the image too clearly, but it looks like there's some sort of red fruit on the tree. Yeah. And you'd be like looking at it go, maybe it's sort of a warning where you'd be like, oh, kids would climb the tree to get the fruit, fall out and break themselves up. So the parents were like, hey, there's Tikbalangs under them trees, so cop yourselves on. That's
a very good observation there, Eamon. Also, it does look like a tree where you would find a humanoid horse, to be honest with you. If you were to find a humanoid horse anywhere, it would be up in that tree.
I think you'd definitely find a humanoid horse there. And you know, weeping willows are the ones that have like those long branches that kind of fold down, almost like curtains. That's right. Like that one, I'd always think you'd find like a banshee or some sort of a hag witch. You know, Tikbalang suits this kind of a tree. And then I think a hag witch suits a weeping willow.
Right, yeah, I agree for sure. So there's a Tikbalang story from a dude named Purs, I think it's Purs. I think that's the way to pronounce it. And his website is the Aswang Project, or at least his account is on the Aswang Project.
Aswang.
If you want to let us know the story here, Eamon, and read it to us, the spooky.
So I have her there. Will I do an accent on it, or is this going to be?
You can, by all means, knock yourself out. Really, do what you like. The floor is yours.
Okay. I know a couple of people who have Tikbalang stories.
Nigeria.
One of them is my father. Yeah, I know this isn't really. I don't know a Filipino voice.
It's really hard to do.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. Tikbalang. All right, I'm going to go with the fucking Amazon voice from the book.
All right.
You know, so yeah, the audio reading of the book.
Yeah.
I know a couple of people who had Tikbalang stories. One of them is my father. When he was a teenager living in Antique, he mentioned one particular night when two of his brothers were quarreling and socking each other outside their hut after a late evening drizzle. Socking.
Oh.
I'm assuming that's going to be a fight, but look, whatever.
Could be.
You can hear shouts and a dull thud here and there. After some time, their mother broke up the fight and asked them to sleep away their tempers and change their clothes for the night. The two grudgingly obliged. A few hours later, there were dull thuds all over again. This time, however, the sound shifted from one side of the house to the other. Father said the last time he checked, both his elder brothers were fast asleep, tired from their fisticuffs earlier. Who or what could be making the sound outside? He tried to sneak out of the back door to check, but his mother, who was still awake and sitting near the window, stopped him and told him nonchalantly that he should stay inside, as, "There's a Tikbalang outside." That's my Filipino voice.
Oh, very good.
He obeyed and made sure that everyone was inside at the time. My father was the 7th of 9 siblings, by the way, and everyone except for himself and my grandma was fast asleep already. Do you want to go for the second...
Yeah.
Paragraph there.
Chair.
Oh, Jesus, are you sure that's a farty chair? Is that a new chair?
No, I'd be, if I was farting, I'd let you know. It would be comedic gold if I was able to reduce farts.
Fucking smell it through the microphone, I'd say. You dirty yoke.
It would do. Rat poison. Still, the dull thud, thud, thud continued. One at a time on each side of the house. He described the sound as akin to the sound of a heavy pestle used for separating the rice chaff from the grain. He was forbidden even to sneak a peek at the window, so he can only imagine what it looked like. Apart from the dull thuds, there was no other sound to hear except the stridulation of crickets and cicadas. He fell asleep to the sound of the Tikbalang jumping like crazy outside.
Yeah, it's soothing.
Yeah. The next morning, he woke up to find that their neighbours and relatives were all milling around a strange sight. huge hoof impressions, each the size of ripe. I'm like switching my voice in between.
Yeah, go for it.
I just making it interesting there. Each the size of ripe coconut littered each side of the house. Yeah, so the impressions were the size of coconuts, basically. So big ass hoof impressions. They came in pairs and overlapped each other. Each mark was several inches deep and filled with rainwater from last night's drizzle. No one owned a horse in the barrio, and not even a thoroughbred bronco could make impressions that big. It's clearly not a buffalo's, since the hoof is not cloven in the middle. Whatever made those impressions would be immensely bigger and heftier than a caribou or a horse, judging from the depth and size of the impressions. The fact that the impressions came in pairs suggests a bipedal creature left those marks. Granting that this thing had legs proportionate to a horse and the torso of a human relative to his legs, it could have easily scraped the ceiling at around 10 to 15 feet tall. Unfortunately, no one had a camera at the time, of course. But having said that, it was understandable in the Philippines in that time for no one to have a camera, because it's obviously quite a poor area in certain parts. Umbrellas were expensive, and at the time they were using banana leaves instead of umbrellas. So that's will sort of give you an idea. The blessings of Tesla's electricity still hadn't reached those parts yet. So you're talking like, early 60s.
Yeah.
So, Eamonn, what do you reckon the Tikbalang was doing jumping over the roof in the middle of the night?
So he was just fed up with the young fellas acting the maggot.
Do you reckon?
He said, "There's only one lad gonna horse around tonight, and that's me, Tikbalang." I'd say that's what it was.
He was going, "I'm the king of horseplay."
Exactly. So yeah, do you think it was similar to the Filipino children's game called the Luksong Tinik?
Of course, yeah. How could I forget Luksong Tinik? It's a children's game where they jump around a gaff or something?
Yeah, jumping thorns, they call it. Yeah.
So they jump over a thorn, probably. They probably lay some bush on the ground or something and jump over it, right?
Acting like a couple of hooligans. And I'd say disturbing the Tikbalang. Yeah, probably. The member said, don't be annoying him, because he wants to sleep.
Yeah, the Tikbalang just woke up to the sound of children laughing. He was like, "Oh, for fuck's sake!" He had a smoke of a cigar, and he was like, "I'm gonna kick the fucking shit out of these bastards tonight." And then he was going around poking his Mickey through the walls. That's the other thing. The Tikbalang, I'd say,
is a massive hog on him.
Yeah, I'd say. It's on about 2 legs. How about 3 legs? I said, motherfuckers.
Yikes!
Yeah,
the tripod belong.
Tripalang. I only wish I was there. I could have punched us. He goes on to say, sorry, by the way, after our massive digression, but he wanted to see a hole and taking a sneak peek, but after a night of rain, no one can really make out anything anymore, so it's kind of irrelevant. But the best news about the Tikbalang for me is that you can have a pet Tikbalang, Eamonn.
Oh, well, I tell you what, where do I sign up?
Well, I don't know where you sign up, but maybe beside the banana tree somewhere. But if you want to tell people exactly how they can tame a Tikbalang, I think they'd like to hear that.
Yeah, so the Tikbalang has a mane of sharp spines, with the 3 thickest of these being of particular importance. A person who obtains one of these spines can use them as an anting, or a talisman, to keep the Tikbalang as his servant. The Tikbalang first must be subdued, however, by leaping onto it and tying it with a specially prepared cord. The would-be tamer must then hang on while the creature flies through the air, fighting madly to dislodge its unwelcome rider until it's exhausted and acknowledges its defeat. So this is kind of like what you had to do when you used to fight Kimbo Slice back in the UFC. He was so big and his muscles needed so much oxygen that if you just jumped onto him and held on long enough, he'd just tire himself out and fall down. Yeah. Kimbo Slice, rest in peace, by the day. He was a good fella, Kimbo. I'd say he's the closest UFC fighter to a horseman I can think of. Like, the size of Kimbo Slice was redonkulous.
Yeah, for sure. He would have been a horseman, yeah, for sure.
I think so. The other option is you can look on his mane and you'll see that there's 3 golden hairs, and if you pluck 3 of them before he or she eats you, so there's girl Tikbalangs, which would be interesting. Do they have big booby horse ladies? You decide.
Don't get me all excited now. It's kind of like
I know.
Lord of mercy.
But so they'll serve you until they die. Now, I would be a very kind Tikbalang master, and I think I'd say after a while, I'd actually give the Tikbalang. I'd say, look, if you want to go back to being a Tikbalang, you've served me well for these years. If you want to go back into the wilderness and go back to being a Tikbalang, I'll set you free. And I'd say, do you know what, O'Neill, you're fucking sound out chap, and I like hanging around. I like what we have here. So let's just have an egalitarian relationship going forward. I'll help you and you help me. And I think me and the Tikbalang will probably get on really well. And if it was the big titty lady Tikbalang, then we'd probably just fall in love. So that'd be nice.
Would you be into a horse head, like?
Well, I tell you what now, I watched Deep Blue Sea 3 there the other day. And the lead. Well, apparently, would you believe this now? Would you believe that me and your cousin watched it at the same time in separate houses without knowing we were watching it, and had a grand conversation? That's
impossible. What are the odds?
So, do you remember there was an actress in Lost, and she had big teeth, kind of like a horse?
Yes.
Dark brown hair. I think she's like a...
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. And she was also very, very pretty, very beautiful lady. So I would like to think that she's like a very beautiful horse because of her big teeth. But she's a very beautiful lady, so I would like to think that my Tikbalang might look a little bit like her.
Okay, I hear what you're saying, right. Yeah, I mean, the way you tame it is kind of like in Legend of Zelda. When you tame a horse, you jump on their back and they fucking go around crazy and all, and then they get tired. But yeah, I think I'd smoke cigars with mine.
That'll be fun,
yeah, just chill out, smoke cigars, and then like let's go and fucking jump around over roofs and all that shit.
I think having like a whiskey and a cigar with the Tikbalang would be pretty cool. It'd be kind of, do you know what, mine would be like the robot horse from Brave Star, and we just hang around together, and my Tikbalang would have a big shotgun and like you shoot people for me. I'd be like, why do you do that when you know you could just kill him to death? And he'd be like, I just like the gun, man. I'd be like, you're fucking deadly, you are, Tikbalang. What would you call your Tikbalang?
Cheval for French.
Cheval, yeah.
I think. What about you?
Rainbow.
Oh, Rainbow, lovely.
Yeah.
That's nice. That's an intimidating name. So to wrap it up, then we have Tikbalang. He's, in my opinion, anyway, to sort of give my thoughts on him, I think he's definitely more in the mythological folklore type of character, and less in the cryptid. In any type of sort of possible way. I don't think I could realistically sort of explain what a Tikbalang is,
Yeah. I tend to agree with you. He seems very folklorish.
Yeah, but the really cool thing about doing episodes about folkloric things is we get into these weird things like animism, and we sort of go off on these weird tangents because it leaves more to your interpretation, I think, and you sort of have to reach a bit more.
I think when you look at stuff like this, you see basic human truths. Do you know what I mean? And you will kind of wind up delving into, cautionary tales, how they might have been used, how, like, as we were talking about, why is it that there's a kinship between horse and man? You talk about the warriors, you talk about this idea, panpsychism or animism, with there's spirit and everything. I think actually, the Tikbalang is a really cool cryptid, but this episode, it was more about the really cool ideas of what things are, of folklore, of how cultures develop, of what the reality is made up of, and I think that's the real cool stuff. And then you have this cool horse guy there as well, so it's got it all.
Yeah, it's got everything from horses to all the rest of it. But he's cool, the Tikbalang. I like him. I thought he was a good cryptid. I enjoyed doing the research for this episode. He's interesting, and it won't be the last time we're in the Philippines for cryptids. I think possibly the reason that Tikbalang really sort of showed up was if the natives of the Philippines at the time had never been exposed to horses. If you can imagine like what a galleon full of horses would have looked like back then, and just seeing these fantastic beasts like coming off a boat, and like they're all rearing up in the air and making all these loud crazy noises, I'm sure that they would have created this, like, it would have awestruck the villagers and stuff, and they would have been like, what the fuck is this? And then maybe it became a thing where only more affluent towns and villages had the Tikbalang, or not the Tikbalang, but had horses. So the more poor, more rural towns sort of feared the Tigbalang more, and they were like, oh, they have this horse up there in some other town, and he's scary, and maybe it was just that's how it sort of originally spread throughout their culture.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that makes perfect sense. They see these, animals they've never seen before, and obviously the stories that are constructed out of that. That this is the kind of stuff that would pop up for sure.
Mm-hmm. Have you anything to add, Eamonn, before we wrap up the Tigbolan?
Not much. But yeah, not much. I've same as I've really enjoyed doing this one. It's made me learn a lot of stuff just about even some of the cultural things, and certainly about like panpsychism. I'd heard of the concept of it. I didn't know the name was panpsychism, so I spent about 2 or 3 hours just like listening to some podcasts and reading up on that because I found it so interesting. So yeah, animism and all that. Yeah, I thought it was a great little episode, and or great for me at least just to read it because you did the research on this one. So yeah, a credit to Robert, I think, ladies and gentlemen.
OMG. Yeah, and I think that's about it. I don't have much else to add to the Tigbalang. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you're listening from the Philippines, welcome. We're trying to bring in people from all these different areas with these cryptids. I'm sure if I was a Filipino person and I heard 2 Irish guys talking about Tikbalang, I'd be fairly stoked. I'd be like, that's cool. and vice versa. If I heard people in the Philippines talking about an Irish cryptid like the Dorku.
Oh, yeah.
No way. That's awesome. So, I think that's it, guys. And it's bye from me.
And bye from me.
And we will see you on the next one.
Take it easy.
Everyone loves shopping online. Well, I'm going to tell you what I tell my golf buddies when they buy clubs. Stop searching for coupon codes. Download Capital One Shopping to your computer. Capital One Shopping instantly searches for available coupon codes and automatically applies them at checkout. Plus, it's free, and you don't even need a Capital One card to use it. That's like hitting a hole in one without even trying. Capital One Shopping. It's kind of genius. What's in your wallet?
Savings and available coupons vary.
Introducing Venture X, Capital One's new travel card for people always asking,
where next?
You earn 10x miles on hotels and rental cars, and 5x miles on flights booked through Capital One Travel, and 2x miles on everything else you buy with Venture X. Plus, receive premium travel benefits like access to over 1,300 airport lounges. The Venture X card from Capital One. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com for details.